Hello, everyone, and welcome to Meet Delic's first session of Mushrooms, a three-part live stream series powered by Mydecine. My name's Kirby Duncan, and I'm the marketing director here at Delic Corp, and we have got a great event for you today. First and foremost, we want to thank our sponsors, Mydecine Innovations Group. Mydecine Innovation Group is an emerging biotech and life sciences company dedicated to developing and commercializing innovative solutions for treating mental health problems and enhancing vitality. At the heart of Mydecine's core philosophy is that psychedelic-assisted psychotherapy will continue to gain acceptance in the medical community, with many of the world's best accredited research organizations demonstrating its remarkable clinical effectiveness. For more information, head to mydecine.com and be sure to follow them on social media. Before we get into the speakers, I wanted to share a couple of announcements. As a reminder, this is the first of a three-part series, so be sure to join us for our other events. Head to meetdelic.com/virtual. We'll drop those links in the chat, and be sure to follow us on social media at MeetDelic and more. Here at Meet Delic, we've got a lot of exciting things coming down the pipeline, including Meet Delic, the live in-person event happening this November. Mydecine is the world's premier psychedelic and wellness edutainment event, catering to holistic healers, revolutionary businesses, and thought leaders. Held in Area 15, an immersive and experiential entertainment complex in the heart of Las Vegas, the exciting two-day event features industry entrepreneurs, psychonauts, and leading voices in research, science, and wellness. Joining us today, we have three people who support providing integration services to their client from a variety of disciplines. First up, we've got Roane Kaufman. Roane Kaufman earned his doctorate degree in educational leadership from Fielding Graduate. His dissertation work was on how ayahuasca can be a social change agent and move us from Western worldview to the indigenous worldview. Roane's approach to psychedelic integration is to respect each person as an individual and unique and honor what each person needs. His work is grounded in indigenous worldview of plant medicine work and shamanistic healing. Next, we've got Sophie Whitley. Sophie received her MA in psychology from Columbia University's Spiritually Mind-Body Institute. She is a certified yoga teacher and meditation teacher and is currently pursuing her doctorate in clinical psychology. Through her work, Sophie assists individuals who have had psychedelic experiences and whom are looking to ground and integrate that experience into their day-to-day lives. Her integration orientation and approach are based in depth and transpersonal psychology. Jill Koziey joins us. She is a registered professional counselor and master practitioner of clinical counseling. She has over 13 years of experience with integration work, and she's been involved in the fields of psychology, meditation, and holistic health for over 30 years. And last but certainly not least is Nick Martin from MindLeap. Nick is the director of community at MindLeap Health. He's completed his master's in counseling psychology from Boston College. Nick has experience conducting research centered on masculinity and substance use, building peer-to-peer support groups, and working in applied settings with adolescents and young adults. At MindLeap, Nick is dedicated to providing the platform that brings together inner wellness and psychedelics. All right, and so for our first event, we are going to be diving into exactly what psychedelic integration is. We're going to be talking about the importance and preparation, what it means to integrate, and learn about the tools that are available to you throughout the process. So to kick things off, I thought we'd start with the question, what does psychedelic integration mean to you? So Sophie, do you want to get us started?
Sure, happy to start us off. So first of all, I just want to say this is a proposed definition that I will present. It is not the only definition, and I think we're all sort of figuring out as we go along what exactly psychedelic integration is. I think of it as the process by which a psychedelic experience translates into positive daily changes in an individual's life. So it's a process. We don't arrive at an integrated state, right? It's a process by which we're learning, growing, and this can be occasioned by psychedelic experience. I also think of it as a process of reflection and connection. So reflecting on what perhaps occurred or came up for us in a psychedelic experience, and then seeing how the connections can be made between that experience and the way we live our own lives. So that's just a proposed way of thinking of it.
Amazing. Jill?
I don't know, Sophie, she pegged it right there. I really like your definition, and that mainly for me, what's really important about working with people with for integration, the definition is how do they take their psychedelic experiences and move forward in their life, and how does that shift things for them? So we're looking for actual shifts, not just, okay, I've had this psychedelic experience, now I'm going to go on and then things can be forgotten, but how might I be able to integrate this into my everyday life, and how might that change my relationships, my outlook on life, how I live my life?
Amazing. And how about Roan?
I appreciate what everybody said so far. I guess I'm going to look at it more like from a spiritual perspective. So, you have this mystical, sometimes initiatory experience, and all this information is coming to you. And maybe some of it's not necessarily positive. Maybe some of it's challenging, or it's hellacious, or it's showing you parts of your shadow. And so for me, when I work with people around integration, I'm looking at like, what are the lessons around the body, the mind, the spirit, the emotions, and unpacking those. And also in the thing, and maybe I'll talk about this later, is like, how am I dialoguing with these plant spirits? Like, I'm in this dialogue with this medicine. It's not just that I'm having this weird experience. It's opening me up to something that is, that's showing me something about my life. So I'm, I would go a slightly different angle, but I appreciate what everybody said so far.
Amazing. Well, guys, I think it makes sense to start at the beginning of the process, right? So for any psychedelic journey, preparation is key, whether it's intention setting, expectation setting, just to make sure that you have the right environment for the journey. So, Roan, what does it mean to set intentions? What goes into that?
I think it's like, if you're going to go, you're going on a trip, you want to say, I'm going to go to Chicago and I'm going to drive there. You want to have, some goals in the experience. There's nothing wrong with just saying, I'm going to have this psilocybin experience and have a mystical experience in the woods. But some of it is, there's a difference, I think, between kind of coming to psychedelic medicines with a real healing intent, or with just an exploration mind. So I think part of it's knowing yourself. So if you're going to start preparing and for a healing thing, you want to look at like, what's not working in my life? Where am I suffering? Where's my heart pain? Where am I having pains in my heart, in my life, that I want to get some healing from? Or what are the insights I want to bring? And those would guide the questions that you're going to bring to the medicine. I just want to say one more thing, though. At least my experience is, you have this intention, and I use this example in my books. Like, it's like you order you want a pepperoni pizza, but you send it to the psychedelic medicine, and they're going to give you one with anchovies and onions and all, not necessarily what you ordered. So some of it's putting your intention out and then using that later to find your answers over time, like the other persons have suggested over time, unpacking it. So
that was beautiful explanation. Thank you, Roan. Jill or Sophie?
Yeah, if I may, I just, the one thing about the intention, just to kind of piggyback on what you said, Roan, is I think it's very important to set that out at the beginning. And I found that it can be used sort of in one of two ways. One is an anchor to keep coming back to throughout the journey. And the other is, okay, this is the intention that I'm setting out at the beginning. And how flexible am I as I see things changing throughout the journey?
Yeah, I appreciate what everyone said. And I think, not to get ahead of it, but to use an intention also as a retrospective point later. It really helps someone understand what has occurred in the unfolding process after they set the intention, after they had the experience. They can then reflect back and see, oh, actually, how is that arriving and arising in my life now? Even though, as Roan so skillfully described with pizza metaphor, that you sometimes don't see the intention right away. You don't see that it actually came to you right away. It can come in a different form. And then later, weeks or months, you'll see actually, in fact, you did receive answers to your intention.
Awesome. And Nick, do you have any thoughts on intention setting as it pertains to MindLeap?
Right. Yeah. So MindLeap as a space for virtual integration to take place. And I'll have an opportunity later on to tell everybody, the listeners included, a little bit more about what that looks like. But, MindLeap deals in a space where we provide support for people not in a psychedelic experience and not in the short-term care, but rather in the long-term care. So intention setting really plays an important role into that. And like Sophie had just alluded to, the intention, and everybody's spoken about to an extent, is that the intentions can come back up at any point, right? And the intentions that somebody has, at time period X might be different at time period Y, or they might be the same thing. And really what MindLeap does is provides support for people wherever they're at on their journeys. So there's a lot of ways that intentions can come up, not only before a journey, but also after.
Sure. Thank you.
Kirby, can I say one more thing about that?
Of course.
I didn't used to think that the preparation stuff was as important. And, over time, I really have found that that's as critical as the experience itself, as critical as the integration. And when I interviewed some of the guys at Johns Hopkins who were doing the psilocybin work, they prepare people for it's like 12 hours before one session. And I just thought that was an interesting data point. Like, wow, you're really digging in that much with intention and building in skills before you're even going to have this experience, which is equal in time to the preparation. And like I took that and was like, wow, I've been maybe not thinking about this as clearly as I could. So I just wanted to throw that out.
Yeah, I mean, that brings up a really great point. So how do you work with clients directly to help them start thinking about intentions and setting those?
Me? Or,
oh, yes, Roan, sorry.
I think all of us would agree. I mean, I think there's just a series of questions that you're going to ask people to meditate on and journal on. I mean, I write worksheets and I have like little PDF books that people fill out, and it's more around like, what are you hoping to gain and what's not working, and really to spend a lot of time kind of self-reflecting on what do you want to get out of this experience, and also how do you come into it in a humble way and a respectful way. Not that I'm taking these drugs and but kind of approaching the whole thing from the beginning, even the thinking it through, like how do I want to change, and just, I don't know, I'm having a hard time articulating, but that sense of really spending time with oneself and really facing what you need to get out of this, as opposed to just having it being a party atmosphere. And that ties into all the setting stuff that I'm sure we'll talk about. But
yeah, definitely.
I think really it is spending that time, and however you process that,
Sure.
I love.
Oh, go ahead, Jill.
So, okay, thanks, Kirby. Roan, I love that you brought up sort of the respect, and now that I've lost the other word that you used, but basically to respect the process and to respect whatever plant or it is that you're using, and in that. And so as far as setting the intention, one of the things that I do is I work with the body. I have people really drop into the body to kind of experiment with or experience what is coming up for them. And I feel that the body has the answers for us, so many answers. And once we're able to kind of attune to that, that's also part of the preparation and intention setting. And that can give us clues through, like I said, for the intention setting, but also throughout our journeys. We can, if we stay connected to the body.
I'll add to that, Jill. I think that a question I often work with clients is just why now? But if you can approach it through the body, that's excellent. Figuring out what emotions or sensations are coming up when they ask the question, like, why now? Why am I wanting to do this journey at this time in my life? There's usually other things that come up. Either they're feeling cut off from some aspect of their self, or they're wanting to connect to or reconnect to an aspect of themselves that's shut down or that they've never tapped into before. So really getting in touch with like what values or essence they want to embody that they maybe aren't at this time. And really, I mean, from my perspective, the more you can meditate on and practice that in the days coming up, leading up to the ceremony or the session itself, the better, because you're sort of prepping your physical form and your spiritual form to be in that space, exploring that space, but really asking that question and intending to see its depth and have unconscious material come up and all this stuff. So thanks for all your input.
Yeah, beautiful. And we've had a lot of people join in the last couple of minutes. So want to welcome everyone again to the Meet Delic Mushrooms event, first part of a 3-part series. If you have any questions to the topics we're discussing, just drop them in the chat, and we'll be having a Q&A in the last 10 minutes or so. So let's talk about expectation setting. Like what's the difference between setting your expectations and the intentions? Jill, can you talk us through that?
For me personally, expectations, that is kind of it's an interesting word and a little bit of a dicey topic, because when we have expectations, what I've noticed in my work and in my life is that expectations can lead to frustration and to disappointment. And so I find that very different than intention, right? And intention is something that we focus on, that, we kind of want to work toward getting. If we have an expectation, and maybe Kirby, you can define it more, and I may be misunderstanding what you mean by expectation, but an expectation of this is how I want this to go. And more often than not, in a psychedelic journey, it doesn't go that way. And so that can kind of throw us off and, really throw a spanner in the works and lead to, sometimes what people would consider to be a bad trip, which,
yeah. I think you nailed it, right? Because going in and holding on to your expectations too tightly can interfere with the whole process. So that's something I want, to discuss. Roan, on a similar note, when you're with goals and expectations around these trips, how do you work with your clients to manage those expectations?
I was glad you asked Jill, because I was just laughing because, to me, the whole thing of an expectation with psychedelic medicine is it's completely the opposite. And it's like with the pizza analogy, that if you are so attached to your expectations, this isn't for you, because it's not going to go how you think, and there will be bumpy moments, and the best experiences are the most challenging ones that show you something you didn't expect. I mean, this is why I think people are drawn to work with psychedelic medicine, because it brings something that you wouldn't expect. And my expertise is in ayahuasca, which is always unpredictable, always pulling the rug out from under you, always something, a new lesson, always something, wow, I never would have thought that. And that's the beauty and the spiritual essence of it. But you can't have you can't have your intention. I liked how Sophie said that, that you're using your intention as an anchor point, because you may come back to that. Like, I think I'm kind of freaking out here, but I have this intention to kind of heal this. So I'm just going to breathe and stay with this experience. But the expectation I would have is that it's not going to, like Jill said, it's not going to go as you ever expected. And that's the definition of a really strong, positive psychedelic experience. That's how we know it's working. If it was the same old thing, it'd be the same old, you could just sit at home and do nothing and it'd be the same thing. So that's, I feel like, why we want to work with these plants, because they bring us knowledge that we don't have, unfamiliar territory, songs, the whole thing, I can't say it enough,
I mean, that's life, right? Like, you can't hold on to the expectation too tightly. Things are going to come at you that you're not prepared for. And that's why we have you guys here and apps like MindLeap. So Sophie, I just want to...
But people do. People come to ceremonies all the time, like, this is how it's going to go, and I want to sit here, and this is how much I'm going to do, and it's like, oh boy, you're in for a challenging night, buddy. It's not going to go like that. It might be the night you cry, or you're in, your fetal position, you're freaking out. You don't know. So it's not which in a heart.
Yeah, and that brings up a great point, because oftentimes in these journeys, your clients come across challenges, right? How do you prepare them, give them the mindset that you are going to come across challenges, and what tools do you offer? Sophie, you want to take this one?
Sure. I think that's a good follow-up to what we're just speaking about, because I think in the intention setting process, you get the opportunity already to release expectation. And if you can't release expectation and let go and remember that you are not going to have control, that's going to translate into your experience with the psychedelic ingestion process. So, I mean, intention setting, I always say set intention, release expectation. And of course, easier said than done. We have all of this research coming out with promising results for psychedelic assisted therapy. And so, of course, people are thinking there's a magic bullet, as we see, and they think maybe overnight I'm going to feel like $1 million. And it's not the case. We have to be cultivating curiosity and openness to absolutely whatever comes up for us. So have the anchor and the intention, but also be willing to know that the more you let go and release control and allow whatever needs to come up, the better off you'll actually be, because the process can just unfold as it should. And the plant medicines are intelligent. They know what to deliver, right? We think we know best. So yeah, I think it's all related. I think the expectation management is a huge part of integration work, and leaning in and practicing letting go of control is a huge part of overcoming challenges during the psychedelic experience.
And Jill, how do you prep your clients for challenges that might come up?
I absolutely agree with what Sophie said. And so it is about sort of releasing expectations as much as possible. She mentioned also leaning in. And so I might expand on that a bit from my perspective and how I communicate with my clients, is that there may be some things that come up that are upsetting or even frightening or terrifying. And when we close down and shrink away, what we're doing is we're closing down and we're shrinking away from an opportunity to learn and to move beyond what's keeping us stuck in our everyday lives. The psychedelics are we can use them in order to be able to move on beyond our stuckness and past traumas and wounds, et cetera, that sort of thing. And so I talk to them about, potentials of what could come up. They may not necessarily come up. And again, releasing the expectations. And yeah, I think that's what's occurring to me in the moment.
Roan, any thoughts?
I think there's a lot of, like, when I work with people, I try to work with them for weeks before an experience. So I'm like, teaching them, how do you do deep breathing practice? So when you're in a challenging moment, how do you deeply breathe deep and relax? How do you calm yourself down? How in those moments can you, if there's a challenging moment or a scary moment, how do you give gratitude just in your heart, because it will calm you down? How do you, keep your eyes open? There's like practices that I try to teach people, put water on your face, tell yourself it's okay, it's going to be okay. This is just a moment in a moment. So I kind of have people practice those things, like, okay, imagine this were happening, and how are you going to face it? So some of it's on the physical level, some's on the spiritual level, and then the self-talk is what gets out of control. So we know when people get in fight or flight, there's the adrenaline dump, and that's when people start to freak out, because they're like, oh my God. And there's the loop that starts. So if we can interrupt the loop during the psychedelic experience, it makes the challenges quite different, especially with psilocybin and ayahuasca in my experience, and also in talking to people. So that those are the key moments that you don't just freak out. There's a trajectory that's happening. There's a series of things in your mind that you start getting more and more amped up. I was at an ayahuasca ceremony once and saw a guy completely freak out, and start, smashing things. But there was a moment where the facilitator missed that, where this guy was agitated, so some of it's the self-soothing. And then the other thing that just came up, and everybody, explained this great. It's a very dicey thing to talk about. And I think it's something, because this is all customized medicine essentially for the people that all of us work with, knowing them, knowing what their triggers are, knowing what might be upsetting for them, and talking. So, when this might happen about an issue about women or men or sexuality, this may have you have this experience, right? So some of it's for us as practitioners being able to see that, coming. But the other thing, and it's a little bit unrelated, but sort of related, was an ayahuasca maestro I know. He just said, when you come to this ceremony, this is about cleaning and learning, and that's what's happening. And anything, when you vomit or when you laugh or when you cry or when you have to go to the bathroom, you're purging out negativity. And the rest of the time, you're really learning about yourself, and you're learning about the plants, and you're in student mode. And just to have that model is always very helpful for me when I was sitting with him in ceremonies.
Sure. And you brought up a really great point about the different kind of themes that can come up in a journey, right? It's not always challenging. So, Sophie, I'd love to get your thoughts. What are some common themes that your clients come across when they journey?
Oh my goodness. I think like Roan said before, it's like everybody's unique. There's such a vast amount of things that can occur. But I'd say, holistically, we can say psychedelics reveal unseen parts of experience, right? So we're often seeing unconscious material arising, whether it's personal or transpersonal. We are getting revealed to us dimensions of ourself and of experience itself that we weren't seeing before. So whether that means it's shifting our perspective or our perception or our narrative or our storylines, there's something new arising. And that can be really scary. That can be really overwhelming, but it can also be incredibly liberating. Sometimes people are experiencing memories as if they feel like they're living them over again. Sometimes they're just having very intense visionary experiences where they're seeing, visions of what they feel is their future or family. All kinds of things can come up in the visionary field. As Roan mentioned too, there can be purging and versions of purging and just releasing energy or releasing something that feels like it needs to be let go of. There's so many versions of what the psychedelic can occasion for different people. But I would say holistically, we can think of it as just like unseen parts of ourself, unseen parts of our experience.
Beautiful. Jill?
Yeah, and sort of bypassing the conscious mind to be able to delve more into what is in our subconscious and heal that. And not only our subconscious, but, and Sophie alluded to this as well, but sort of the collective unconscious, what, is in our world and actually what is outside of our world. And so that in itself can be life-changing, of course. Just to have that experience. But as both Roan and Sophie said, I find it's on a really individualized basis. And the more I work with someone and find out more about them, and that we can work together to focus on what would be applicable for them and their healing journey. One of the things I do want to circle back around to that it just occurred to me as far as sort of giving some information about how to work with oneself once we're journeying is I do talk to people about having a specific sort of anchor word or sentence that they can keep coming back to. And we work on that ahead of time, and so that they have that. And I also want to underline the importance, and Roan brought this up, but I'm bringing it up again, of breath. And because breath can be very grounding, and also being in the body as much as possible. I know often we feel like we're out of our bodies, we're not aware of it, but if we can bring some awareness, even touching our bodies, various parts of our bodies where we can kind of feel calm and grounding, that's helpful as well. So
Beautiful. So after the journey, psychedelic aftercare is so crucial. So how do you work with clients to take learnings from your session and incorporate them into your daily lives? So, maybe Roan, I'd love to hear in days, weeks following a session, what sorts of things do you walk your clients through on how to integrate?
Sorry, I didn't see the mute button. So I wrote a workbook about this. So I have like a whole workbook, which is, like 300 pages, and it's mostly sort of like questions of, so the attempt, at least from my vantage point, and this is applicable to everybody, you don't have to buy the workbook. It's like, how do you break down what happened and track it? What happened in your mind? What were the insights you had? What were the physical experiences in your body that are teachings? What are the mystical or spiritual experiences? How do you categorize those? What were the insights that you had on all these different levels? And like, I, at one point had this image of like, you're laying down and you're having all these experiences, and how do you catalog them? So I think number one is to, I always, when I used to go to ceremonies in the morning, people would really journal and try to like almost catalog what happened, because it will be unpacked later. There's so much information. It's like a fire hose of things, like maybe you see a bird, or you imagine that you're a crystalline structure. All these things have meaning later. So first of all, I think it's to like unpack it and kind of get your arms around it, because maybe even the word love or heartbreak or something didn't seem significant in the night, but later on you're like, wow, this is actually the key to everything. Or you saw an ancestor and you see this addiction pattern that I have is an ancestral wound. And it's like this massive amount of homework that can be unpacked. So for me, like the beginning part is just cataloging it. And then the next step is like, I think Jill had mentioned this in the way beginning, how do you make this actionable? And how do you turn this into concrete things to do? But the first thing is to kind of get your mind around it, because you don't even know what happened. Let's just say it's I think of it as a foreign language that we don't really have any understanding of as Westerners. If we grew up in a culture like peyote people or an ayahuasca place, maybe we would understand it, but we don't understand it. And it's arrogant to even assume that we do. And so for us, we have to really figure out this language and what's being communicated to us. So I think that's like the beginning part, and for some people, they have one experience and it's like enough for the whole rest of their life. There's like downloaded instructions to do this, and this. I have a friend like that, and she moved to Costa Rica and opened a retreat center with horses and equestrian therapy. And it was one night of ayahuasca and that was it. 5 years of
sounds like a beautiful life for sure.
Yeah.
Sophie, what sort of behaviors do you encourage your client to implement to make the aftercare more impactful?
Sure. I think this is very hard to prescribe this to many people in Western society, but I just tell people to slow down first and foremost. It's like, as much as you can you slow down? Even in, we have so many demands of us in our day-to-day life with work and family and all these things, but if you can have them slow down as much as possible, to give themselves time to journal, like Roan's saying, to really like give themselves free time to write and record what did come up for them in the process, in the psychedelic session, and give themselves time to meditate, to be in nature, to just be able to have spaces where they really can decompress and reflect. And I think a huge part of aftercare is just like normalizing the experience too. Surround yourself, either if you have an integration coach or just a friend or people you can speak to that are supportive of the process you just went through and aren't going to make you feel, like misunderstood or not received well. I think that's a huge part of aftercare, is just feeling like you have people that you can speak to, unfiltered about this process, and feel really received and supported by them. But yeah, slowing down and just taking good care of yourself. I think Jill keeps mentioning how important the body is. So nourishing the body with good foods, being able to take a bath if that's something you like to do, exercising, just really being with your experience in a more gentle, sort of tender way.
You bring up so many good points. I loved what you said about journaling. And Jill, I'd be curious to learn from you. Are there any other habits or activities that you recommend in the post-integration process?
Not really. They've been pretty much covered as far as sort of how I approach things. I find that the journaling is my definite go-to, even for people who don't normally write things down, because there is a connection. And I'm talking about journaling by writing, not by putting on the computer. There's a huge difference in doing that as far as integrating what our experiences are physiologically. So journaling and, as Sophie mentioned, talking to people, and really, really being careful, right? Sometimes we have experiences that we're so excited about and we just want to share this. And as Sophie said, they may not be received well. And there can be a lot of damage that can happen there. So that's one thing, is maybe picking one or two people who you really trust, if you even want to, over and above the person you're working with, the therapist you're working with for integration, to share that. And also, and this goes for therapy in general, and as well, is to share your experience verbally. Sometimes the energy can just leak, right? And we can become deflated if we share too much, even if we don't get negative feedback or whatnot, right? So it's kind of about not necessarily not sharing, but kind of holding close to your heart your own experience. And I find that one aspect, and it's not a tool per se, but it's an approach, And this is the word that I was missing before, Roan, when I referred to you, but you mentioned humility. And I want to bring that up again, because to have humility around our experiences with these medicines, I find to be really important in terms of being able to integrate this. Because because it is all awe-inspiring and more than we can actually understand, and we are just experiencing it. So to be able to be humble around in that experience, I think, is a really important aspect to be able to integrate it and move forward.
Beautiful. And go ahead, Ron.
One more thing. Great description, Jill. This is a really tough thing to, I think, to articulate. It just triggered a memory I had, and this may not be applicable always, but in like a lot of native traditions that work with peyote, one of the things is after any experience, there's like in this cycle of learning, you seek, you have this experience, and then their integration is that you make something, like you do an artistic thing that represents it, and I just think that that's a really beautiful thing to do. I mean, I'm not a textile person, but I have a lot of textiles from Peru and around the world that are beautiful, and I've always thought that that's a great thing to do, even to collage or to make something out of, a bunch of sticks or something that really feels like I've honored this experience in nature and using the natural world as as an anchor point to make it, because the journaling is great for the mind, but it's like there's a whole different spirit. And what do we do to honor the spirit? And I don't have an answer for that. And it's a very tricky question, right? But like something, we take a plant from nature. How do we do something that's nature-based? Because we're nature-based people and we're ingesting this knowledge that's forever from these plants. And what do we do? So I don't know. I just wanted to throw that out as just something that I've done at different times. That's beautiful, even if it's drawing or carving or making jewelry, something like this that really, like I'm wearing a necklace from Peru that I made that feels like this really honored my experience and I can touch it and feel it. And there's something I think about making something real that helps ground the experience as well.
Yeah, and that artistic expression is great. Well, you guys all mentioned the word community, which is so important in psychedelics and how we share and how we connect, especially, we've all been through this pandemic, so everything's so virtual now, which, is great because, for the audience, everyone here, all of these workers are on MindLeap, the app. And so I'd love to take a moment and talk about how we can use technology to connect in the integration process. And Nick, maybe this would be a great place for you to kick us off and share the pros and cons of like connecting virtually.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thanks for the discussion. And all the panelists have done a great job so far of speaking about the integration process. And I think underlying all of it is this, ability for this stuff to be done, a lot of it virtually, which is really excellent, especially obviously in light of the onset of COVID-19. And like, even though things are emerging and we're excited maybe to an extent, there's still a lot of pros to doing this work through a virtual health model. Much like this conference itself allows, a lot of people are able to gain access to these people's wisdom and to this discussion and to this community from the comfort of their own homes or from a remote location. So I think some of the advantages, I would say, one would be, well, I guess from starting from the two things I think that were really mentioned. One is having somebody that you can go to for support, whether that's the coach, therapist, counselor that you're working with for integration. It can take place in a virtual health setting. It can definitely take place upon MindLeap, which I'll get to in a bit. And then the other thing would be, what about these mindfulness practices that you might be pursuing on your own, whether they're somatic, they're journaling, artistic expression. There's options out there. There's access to a lot of resources out there, many of which again exists on MindLeap, which I'd love to go into, a curated library of content that we provide. But I think both of those things are possible. And then some of the pros, I think I just alluded to quickly here, would be that people from different states can meet with people in different states. People from different nations can do that same thing. So geographic distance is overcome. And then that's one of the more obvious ones. And then one of the ones that we maybe aren't inclined to think about, but is definitely a big deal. I mean, in my therapeutic work, I worked with people who faced a lot of barriers to receiving treatment and going in for help seeking. And The virtual space gives people a sense of anonymity because they can go into their offices or they can go into their workspaces and say, hey, I need to take a call. And the people around them, their friends, their colleagues, their family members don't need to necessarily know what that call is. Whereas if they have to explain that they have to drive somewhere, to go somewhere, sometimes there's maybe a little bit more questioning. So I think that sense of anonymity gives people security in feeling welcomed into the space and not necessarily facing as many attitudinal barriers. So those are the things that come to mind.
Yeah, thank you. And I think this would be a great time to just talk about MindLeap. So we've actually got some slides if we could throw those up. So MindLeap Health is a virtual health platform that provides users with inner wellness resources to assist them in their daily mental health journey. MindLeap features a community of professionals, a private health journal, and an ever-expanding content library that includes meditations, psychoeducation materials from experts in mental health. MindLeap provides the space for users to video conference with professionals who can support them in psychedelic integration, as well as their inner wellness journeys more broadly. And everyone here today is a MindLeap counselor and coach. So, Jill, could you share a moment with us about your experience connecting with patients virtually using the MindLeap app and more?
Sure. My experience connecting with patients virtually has been mixed, which I'll go into. But the overarching thought that I have that I just want to say off the hop is I am incredibly grateful for the fact that we have this ability now, especially during COVID. It's just obviously a crazy time. And so a lot of people who would be otherwise isolated have the ability to reach out, and we have the ability to be able to be there for them. So there's that. As far as sort of the virtual therapy goes and support, I find it a little bit challenging in that when I'm with someone face to face in a room, it does feel different. I'm able to see their whole bodies. And so to be able to sort of like read what's going on there and feel what's going on there, I find it easier to kind of co-regulate our nervous systems, sort of align when we're in the same room together. So that really helps sort of in the therapeutic process as well. And so those are sort of, and also I'm able to support people actually, if they're going through something really, really big, I feel more comfortable supporting them physically in the same physical proximity. So that being said, back to my overarching gratitude for this ability to be able to connect with people online. I am surprised with actually how easy the transition was for me to be able to meet with people. And in fact, I can see their faces more easily and then I can sitting across a room from them. So there are benefits to that as well. As far as the co-regulation goes, yes, it's better in person. However, that can still happen where it's like if I'm able to maintain my calm, I can still help someone maintain or come back to a place of calm when I'm working with them, even if it is via the internet. There's the whole thing of convenience and everything that Nick mentioned too, right? Sometimes there's a bit of a stigma attached to seeking out any sort of support whatsoever. And and so to be able to meet with people sort of in person privately, the convenience of being able to be in their own home. And then once you hang up, then you can get on with your day instead of having to drive half an hour back to work or whatever it is, right? So I find that the benefits outweigh the negative aspects of it.
Sure, and it sounds like it's an opportunity to find the right mix, right? There are ways that both in-person and virtual help support the whole process. So that's amazing, thank you. Roan, what are your thoughts on virtual MindLeap?
I mean, I feel like an old guy where it's not a natural transition for me, but, like for me, I've always had this association. I mean, I've been leading groups for more than 20 years, so it's been a big transition. But with COVID, I've been surprised at how wonderful it's been. I mean, I like seeing people. I like being around them, but it's also the world we live in, and it's not always practical. Like, I work with people all over the world. I can't do that in person. Somebody can't, I talked to somebody in Ireland this morning, so there's something amazing about it. And maybe there's certain things that I can't do, that I can't touch somebody physically. I can't do hands-on healing, but I've led groups and done in-person stuff all through COVID time. And I'm part of like a prayer group, like a sweat lodge community. And we did virtual sweat lodges, which we would never, these are non-psychedelic experiences, but I would have never thought that we would do this virtually, but it worked really well. So even creating a spiritual ritual container, you can do virtually. And so for me, the people that I work with, it's worked out really well. And I think the time savings too, like Jill said, you don't have to drive over here. It's quick. And that's what's great about the Mind Leap thing, is you can set up a short appointment and, or you can talk frequently. There's something about that I think serves people in the world that we're living in really well, and is efficient, and it still feels really intimate. There's not a disconnect at all. You can still feel somebody's heart and feel their spirit, virtually.
Beautiful. Sophie, what's your experience been like with the virtual community?
Everyone, Jill and Roan, have both mentioned important points. And I think the one thing I would add is that, what's the selling point? Like, the comfort of your own home. I mean, I experience like people being in their own spaces are experiencing a different level of comfort. I mean, even though, of course, as therapists, we create a very warm, welcoming space, I think there really is something to the fact that the mind can loosen, the emotions can loosen when someone can kind of unwind and unravel in their own space. There is something to that. I would also add something, which is, I think as practitioners, we really hope that our clients become their own guides, like that they become the master of their own kind of tools on their own. And that's what we kind of want to give them, right? We want to provide them the tools for them to really feel the strength and confidence to navigate their life on their own. And so there's something to the bit of a disconnect we experience on virtual platforms actually gives people the sense that they really are doing that. They're in their own space, they're in their own life, and then they have us as an external guide, an influence, but we're really like helping them build on their own life. So I think that's a major benefit of any virtual connection. And yeah, I mean, let's be honest, convenience, man. People they want things to be convenient. They want their time to be managed well. And they love that they can just sign right on and not get in their car and commute 35 minutes. I mean, it's the world we're living in. So I have to laugh at that, but there's a benefit.
Great, thank you so much. And before we get into the Q&A, Nick, I thought I'd give you a chance to talk about maybe the best ways that people can find Mind Leap, how to get started.
Sure. Thanks. Yeah, absolutely. So, what people covered, I think, is really right up the alley of what Mind Leap offers. It's a variety of solutions. And to Sophie's last point here about wanting people to become their own masters of their journeys, really what Mind Leap is designed to do is to meet people along in their journeys wherever they're at, both their inner wellness journeys, whether that concerns psychedelic integration or not. And the variety of resources, the chart that you had shown really highlights that with these three different components. The first being the community. And as the person who's heading up the community and with 3 community members here before you, I think that's been demonstrated that this is a professional space. It's a curated, should say it's a vetted set of people who are providing that support. So that's what you can access as a user out there. If you're looking for a solution, if you're looking for somebody to connect with for your integration needs, that's what the community space at Mind Leap offers. It also has, the second point is this health journal, which is a completely private and secure space for people to engage in their own monitoring of their well-being and activities that they engage in. And then finally would be this curated inner wellness library, which has a number of meditations, sound journeys, and psychoeducation, educational content that people can consume. So it's all very accessible. It all exists within the Mind Leap app. What we're talking about here today is really what's coming soon here on Mind Leap. So we're very excited for the release of new updates into Mind Leap 2.0. It's an exciting time for us. It's an exciting time for our community members. I would invite people to explore our website, website to explore our app and to look forward to the anticipated release of 2.0 taking place in just a few weeks.
Awesome. Well, great. I think we got about 10 minutes left, so I want to go ahead and get to the audience Q&A. I am pulling up the questions now. The first question we have is from Libby. Can any of the panelists elaborate on any experiences they've had preparing clients with tapering off SSRIs and other meds that might interfere and what they've learned about this process? Jill?
No. That's the short answer. I personally don't deal with that because I'm not a medical professional. And so what I do is I recommend that my clients, if they are on SSRIs or any other medication, that they speak to their doctor, they tell them exactly what their intention is, what they want to be doing, and then have guidance, medical guidance from their doctor. And then I come in once that's all been taken care of. But I don't have the, it's not my area of expertise. So I don't even go there. Sorry, I can't be more helpful.
Yeah, so definitely consult a professional.
Right. Yeah. I think just to hop in, I think that might be a little bit beyond the scope of what these people deal with. And I think that's an important distinction to be made, is that you should always consult with primary care physician for anything dealing with medication, prescriptions, things like that should always take place within a professional doctor setting.
Perfect. It's all right. And the next question is from Lauren. How can we assess post-experienced, whether they are purgings, visionaries, our parts, trans narratives from others? Sorry, how can we assess after experiences, be it purgings, visions? How do we assess that? Roan?
Well, I think the beginning part is to understand what they were, right? So, I mean, it's like, you're having this experience. When you're in the psychedelic experience, you're in it. You're not narrating it. You don't have the little person inside you from above watching. I mean, you're observing yourself having this experience, but this is a post-experience thing that you need to then unpack. So let's say you did ayahuasca and you purged all night. What did that, later you're going to find out what that meant. Or maybe at the time when you're doing that, when you're purging, you're aware, like, Jesus, this is this stuck energy from this childhood trauma I had when I was 6. Oh my God, let's get it out of me. Something like this. I mean, oftentimes when people are purging, they have a sense like, God, this just feels like heavy, stuck crap. I just want to get rid of it. I was at a ceremony once with a group of people who were former Mormons, and somebody started yelling, screw Joseph Smith, and they were, hopefully that's not offensive, but, it was like they were purging this energy. So some of this is identifying what's going on. And it's the same thing with all the things that you mentioned. It's like, only you can answer this. This is the exact reason why you need an integration coach, is that this is specialized, customized to you. This is your language and your dialogue with this medicine. And I can't give you, here's the one thing to do, because I don't know you, and it's going to show up as a complete different metaphor for you. Like I once, for example, vomited a bunch at an ayahuasca ceremony, and I felt like a tarantula came out of my mouth. And I asked the ceremony leader, and he said that was all your ancestral crap coming out of your mouth, and that's what that represents in his cosmology. So these are really specific questions that you can sit with, and also you need to ask somebody. There's no like dictionary, Reader's Digest guide to the vision. You have a vision of a snake, and that's what it means. There's a lot of this stuff is stuff that is meant to, I think one of the problems is that these take a long time to unpack. This is a mystery. This is a lengthy thing. It's not a snap your fingers and understand. These are existential questions to wrestle with. And so there is no shortcut. And if you want a shortcut, maybe psychedelic medicine isn't for you, because this is like the heavy hitter league, So that's what I would say, is to be patient and let the stuff unfold, and have somebody, a guide that you trust, that you can talk it through, that can kind of hold space for you.
Sure. And Sophie, did you want to add? It looked like you were maybe reaching to unmute.
Yeah, I just would like to add something, which I think is actually sort of what Roan's already speaking to, but there can be so much information in one ceremony, and people can get sort of hung up on how should I interpret this? How should I interpret this? Like Roan is saying, if we attach ourselves too much to knowing, oh, well, this was definitely a memory from when I was 6, is that useful? Like at the end of the day, like, is that helping us? Is it hurting us? Are we getting too hung up and attached on knowing? We really have to allow ourselves the space and the time to see if more insight comes in the weeks and months following. If we want to interpret and know exactly what's ours and what isn't ours in the beginning, we're going to be confused, and we'll kind of miss out on the opportunity to be in the mystery of it, like Roan identified.
Beautiful.
I'll say one more quick thing. I know we don't have a lot of time, but I think that's one of the ways to vet the set and setting of this experience you want to go through. So for me, like if I want to be in a group, I want to know that the group is processing in the morning, or as a group that we're having this experience, because maybe I'm in a ceremony with Sophie and what she's experienced is what I'm experiencing, or what she has to say in the morning. I was like, oh my God, that's so brilliant. That's exactly what I need to hear. Or Jill says something, it's back to the community thing, is that when I hear the community sharing, I'm like, oh my God, you experienced that? Oh, that's a piece of my story. And a lot of this is story narration. We're reclaiming our story in these medicine ceremonies. So I think that's really important as you decide to do the work. But yeah.
Beautiful. Here is a question about frequency. So I'm curious if there's a suggested or reasonable frequency one could or should journey to see benefit before it becoming too much. Do you guys have recommendations on how you approach how often people should be journeying?
I personally don't. Again, I feel like it's an individual process, and something that my clients and I do talk about. And each individual client has been different in terms of what's of benefit to them, and have they fully integrated, what needs to be integrated from the last journey and that sort of thing. So there is no set sort of pattern that I've discovered.
Sure. And then last question, what background or certifications does someone need to have to become a MindLeap specialist? Does MindLeap have a certification program for psychedelic assisted therapy? Nick, you want to take this one?
Absolutely. It's a great question. I'll answer first. We don't yet have a certification program. There are some certification programs that exist out there. There's no like unified consensus upon things that would allow someone to be like a licensed, let's say, psychedelic assisted therapist. Again, the landscape of how this is going to look has yet to unfold, at least in the United States. What MindLeap does is that MindLeap provides integration solutions for people with professionals who operate through a coaching framework. So it's a little bit different than pursuing a typical therapeutic route. These people aren't necessarily operating under their licenses in order to be providing this work. This is rather coaching around integration. So that's the number one distinction I would make. In terms of the vetting process, there's a lot that goes into it in terms of who we take on as one of our specialists. There's a screening process, an interview process. I mean, all the folks sitting here before you have gone through it themselves. There's training that we have associated with it in terms of a few things. So it all contributes to the vetting process, but I think it's an important distinction that it's hard to know who out there can support you in integration. So there is some wisdom that goes into the selection of this. It's a carefully reviewed, there's careful review that goes into each application, and the specialists that are present on the MindLeap space, again, have all successfully passed through that vetting process. If somebody out there does have experience in this and they're interested in furthering their integration work and doing so in a virtual setting, by all means, there's the ability to apply to become an integration specialist on MindLeap that's present on our website.
Thank you. Well, we are about out of time. I want to thank everyone, Roan, Jill, Sophie, Nick, thank you all so much for being here. Our friends at Mydecine, thank you for powering this event. Again, this is Meet Delic. Be sure to check out, we're sending the links to you in the chat now. Check out all of our socials. Come to the Meet Delic event in November. We hope to see you there. Thanks everyone again, and have a great day.